You know how some historical mysteries just sort of lodge in your brain?
Right.
The Pyjama Girl, found back in 1934 in Australia. She's definitely one of those.
Oh, absolutely. A really enduring one.
And what keeps it so fascinating, I think, are these little details, these pieces that just don't quite seem to fit together.
Mm-hmm.
Which is exactly what we're diving into today. Specifically, the really strange, conflicting dental evidence around her identity.
Yeah, the teeth. It sounds specific, but it got complicated.
Right. We've got the original dental descriptions, the police gazettes from the time, even testimony from the later inquest.
So a good amount of primary material to work with.
Exactly. And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to unpick all that conflicting information and see, well, what can these teeth actually tell us about the whole case?
It's fascinating from the get-go, isn't it, how dental records, something we think of as pretty factual, became such a sticking point.
Totally. So we have two main figures here, right? Their findings are...
That's right. First, there's dentist Francis Herbert Jackson. He examined the body for the police way back in September 1934, shortly after she was found.
Okay. Jackson and 34.
Then, much later, there's dentist William Joseph O'Brien. And he comes forward claiming the teeth belonged to Linda Agostini, who had been his patient years before.
And spoiler alert, their stories don't perfectly match up.
Not quite. And that's where, it gets really interesting for us trying to piece this together.
Okay, so let's start with Jackson. His initial examination in 1934, he actually looked at the teeth twice, didn't he? September 3rd and 7th?
Yes, two separate examinations quite close together. And his findings were published in the police gazettes, and they were incredibly detailed.
What kind of details are we talking about? Just missing teeth?
Well, yes, he listed the missing teeth very precisely. For the upper right jaw, he noted the first molar was missing. Gone.
Okay, upper right first molar missing.
Upper left jaw, surprisingly, no missing teeth at all, according to Jackson.
Huh. And what about the lower jaw?
More missing there. On the right side, the first molar and the wisdom tooth were gone. He even noted the first molar looked like it was taken out young, maybe between 6 and 12 years old.
Wow, specific.
Very. And lower left, he listed the second bicuspid, first molar, second molar, and the wisdom tooth all missing.
So if I'm counting right, that's 1 upper right and then 2 lower right, 4 lower left, 7 missing teeth in total.
Exactly, 7 missing teeth. It gives a very distinct pattern.
And he didn't just list what was gone, did he? I remember the notes mentioning the general state of the mouth, too.
Oh, yeah, he went into a lot of detail there. Described the lower right bicuspid as being twisted distally, sort of turned backwards a bit.
Okay.
A high, broad palate. The second upper left bicuspid was apparently a bit long, good alignment of the front teeth, but with a fairly big overlap of the top ones.
So quite a distinct bite.
Seems so. And he also noted, importantly, no blemishes on the enamel, no signs of gum disease pyorrhea, as they called it.
Healthy gums, then.
Apparently. Also a short upper lip, normal ridges on the roof of the mouth, the roux gave very little tartar, normal tooth cusp formation. He also added that the lower left molars seem to have been extracted a number of years ago.
It really sounds like he was building a comprehensive picture for identification, leaving no stone unturned.
Absolutely. And then there were the fillings. He documented every single one.
Okay, let's get into those. Fillings are crucial for dental ID.
Right. So upper right second molar, a gold inlay on the chewing surface. He even specified it involved the mesial pit, but not other parts like the distal pit or buccal fissure.
Gold. He even guessed the quality, didn't he?
He did. Suggested it was probably 22-karat gold. Then the upper right wisdom tooth had just a tiny amalgam pit filling.
Okay, moving to the other side.
Upper left, first molar, an amalgam filling covering the whole chewing surface, pits and grooves. The second molar had amalgam just in the distal pit, and the wisdom tooth had a larger amalgam filling on its chewing surface compared to the one on the right.
So quite a bit of work on the upper teeth. What about the bottom?
Lower right second molar had a gold inlay covering all the grooves on top. But interestingly, the lower left jaw, no fillings at all.
None at all on the lower left. That's another specific marker.
Exactly. All these details, missing teeth, fillings, positions, it creates a very specific dental signature.
And this detailed blueprint, as you called it, was published in the Police Gazette notices. That feels significant. They were really relying on this.
Definitely. Hoping some dentist somewhere would recognize the work. And the fact that the missing first upper right molar is mentioned in multiple Gazette notices really hammers that point home.
Right. And you mentioned the chart. Sometimes those old charts need flipping mentally, don't they?
That's a crucial point. The Gazette included a chart, and you usually have to reverse it left to right in your mind to match the actual mouth. An X on the chart's left means a missing tooth on the patient's right.
Got it. So confirming again, Jackson's 1934 findings show 7 missing teeth, 1 upper right, 6 lower. A very clear picture.
Very clear. But as we hinted, that picture gets, well, it gets contested later on.
All right, fast forward a decade to 1944, the inquest. And this is where dentist O'Brien comes in.
Exactly. William Joseph O'Brien. He was brought in and asked, essentially, do these teeth belong to Linda Agostini? He treated her back in the early 30s.
And his record keeping was different from Jackson's, wasn't it?
Yeah, he mentioned right away that he didn't use charts. He kept his records in a ledger book, just written notes.
Ledger versus chart. That can make a difference in how you recall things years later, maybe.
Potentially, yes. One's visual, one's purely text. But there was one point where their records perfectly aligned.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
O'Brien had a ledger entry from November 12, 1930. It documented the extraction of the lower right third molar, the wisdom tooth.
And Jackson in 34 also found that lower right wisdom tooth missing.
Exactly. So on that specific tooth, they agreed it was gone. A small but significant point of agreement.
Okay, so one point of agreement,
Yeah.
but then came the disagreements. Big ones.
Yes. This is really the crux of the dental conflict. O'Brien testified at the inquest that he remembered, quite clearly, putting a gold inlay into the first upper right molar of Linda Agostini.
Wait, the first upper right molar?
Yes.
But didn't Jackson's 1934 chart, the one published in the Gazette, explicitly show that exact tooth as missing? Extracted?
That is precisely the problem. Jackson's chart and notes say missing. O'Brien's memory and his ledger, presumably supporting that memory, though not explicitly stated for that tooth in the sources we have, says he put a gold inlay in it.
You can't have it both ways. A tooth can't be both missing and have a filling in it.
Exactly. It's a fundamental contradiction. One of them has to be mistaken, or they're talking about different people.
Wow. Okay, so what does that immediately suggest about the whole identification process?
It throws everything into question, doesn't it? Either Jackson made a massive error in 34, missing a whole tooth with a gold filling.
Which seems unlikely given his detailed notes on other fillings.
Right. Or O'Brien's memory after, 14 years was faulty, or the body Jackson examined wasn't Linda Agostini, the person O'Brien treated.
And things got even more confusing at the inquest itself with the dental model, right, a cast.
Yes, they produced a plaster dental cast, a model of teeth, and guess what?
Let me guess. It had a gold inlay in the first upper right molar.
Bingo. It did have a gold inlay in that exact spot. O'Brien even looked at it and said it was like the work he'd done on Linda Agostini.
So the physical evidence presented at the inquest supported O'Brien's memory, but directly contradicted Jackson's original examination of the actual body.
Precisely. It's like two parallel sets of dental evidence emerged. One from the body in 1934, one from memory, and a model in 1944.
Did Jackson comment on this model during the inquest?
He did, and his statement is really quite damning. He said, and I'm quoting here, "I have compared the teeth of the body with the cast. It is not a model of any of the teeth in the body."
Whoa, so he's saying, flat out, that model you're using, that's not the teeth I examined back in 34.
That's the clear implication. He's suggesting the inquest was using a model based on Linda Agostini's teeth, or O'Brien's memory of them, not a model of the actual Pyjama Girl's teeth that he had personally examined.
So the fundamental question isn't just about the teeth themselves, but about the evidence being used. Its reliability, its source.
Exactly. It highlights the challenges of historical investigation, especially when memory comes into play years later, and when different forms of evidence, like initial examination versus later models, seem to conflict.
It just raises so many questions. Why use that cast if the original examiner disputes it? And there was something else odd about O'Brien's story, wasn't there?
Yeah.
About why he contacted the police back in 34.
Yes, that's another layer. O'Brien claimed he contacted the police in 1934 because he recognized the description of the fillings in Jackson's dental chart, the one published in the Gazette.
Okay. But hang on, if the Gazette description was based on Jackson's findings,
Right.
it wouldn't have mentioned a gold inlay in the first upper right molar because Jackson said the tooth was missing.
Correct. The Gazette description detailed the fillings Jackson found, but not the one O'Brien specifically remembered putting in that upper right molar. It also didn't mention any porcelain fillings, which O'Brien apparently also recalled doing for Agostini, though that's a slightly separate detail.
So it seems, well, unlikely,
Yeah.
that O'Brien could have confidently identified Linda Agostini based only on the Gazette notice if his key identifiers weren't actually listed there.
It certainly raises a question about the trigger for his recognition. Was it just the published details or something else?
Mm.
And it circles back to that model. Why was a model created that seemed to match O'Brien's memory rather than Jackson's documented findings?
And Jackson wasn't just any dentist, was he? You mentioned he had specific experience in this area.
That's right. He was apparently skilled enough that police asked him specifically to extract filled teeth from botters and mount them in models for identification purposes.
So confusing a missing tooth with a filled tooth seems improbable for someone with that background.
Highly improbable, you'd think. It underscores the potential pitfalls of relying on memory over contemporaneous documentation in forensic work, even back then.
So despite all this really significant contradiction, Jackson's chart showing a missing tooth, O'Brien's memory, and the inquest model showing a filled tooth in the same spot, what did the coroner decide?
Well, despite Jackson's direct contradiction about the model, the coroner, Mr. Tingate, concluded that the body was Linda Agostini.
Wow. Even with that clear dental discrepancy unresolved.
Exactly. And other research you mentioned, Leslie and Barrett's thesis, and even AI analysis of the documents confirms it. The core disagreement about that upper right first molar between Jackson and O'Brien is undeniable in the records. It's a central, unresolved piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so let's just recap that core dental puzzle clearly.
All right. You have Jackson in 1934. Detailed exam, published chart says the first upper right molar is missing.
Clear.
Then you have O'Brien in 1944. Recalls putting a gold inlay in that same tooth for Linda Agostini years prior, and a dental model shown at the inquest has that inlay.
Got it. Two descriptions that simply cannot both apply to the same person's tooth.
Correct. They are mutually exclusive.
And that really is the absolute crux of this specific mystery within the larger case, isn't it? How could such a basic disagreement, missing versus filled, exist in the dental evidence?
It's baffling.
And maybe even more baffling, why did the official inquest proceed with the identification based on O'Brien's account and the disputed model, even when the original examiner, Jackson, stated so clearly it didn't match the body he saw?
It makes you think, doesn't it, about the pressures of an investigation, the weight given to different types of evidence, the fallibility of memory over a decade.
Or perhaps even how evidence was handled or presented back then. It's complex.
This whole tangled web of dental details, it just perfectly highlights the challenges of identification, especially historically. It makes you confront the limits of memory, the potential for error, maybe even, as you say, unintentional biases in how evidence is viewed or valued.
It really does. So for everyone listening, maybe the final thought to mull over is this. If such a stark contradiction exists in something seemingly objective like dental records, what does that suggest about other potential uncertainties or interpretations, not just in the Pyjama Girl case, but in how we approach historical mysteries in general?
A great point. It leaves you wondering what other evidence, in this case or others, might look different if we could somehow access the pure, unmediated facts, free from the distortions of time and memory. It certainly keeps the intrigue alive.